I don't know why anyone should have a wrench when he even doesn't have hands to use it, but let's suppose the wrench was just chilling there, and then the character came by and dropped his coffee cup out of shock that the keyboard was in Japanese. But he had to type his college essay in that very same night, so he used the Japanese letters and was dropped out of school, and he became the first imposter. The evil was born. So this was the heartbreaking story, and now for the tutorial. It's not a step-by-step tutorial, some parts are though, but mostly I tried to squeeze my 2-day work into some 45 minutes, and this was hard actually. So I tried to leave out the most basic things, but even then we are gonna cover a ton of subjects, and we're gonna start with the character. So let's use the default cube, which is unexpected and unnatural, but we are quickly gonna make it round with Ctrl-3, which adds the subdivision surface modifier and kinda creates a camo as well, so we don't know it's a cube anymore. Let's drag in the reference and start with the model. Let's match the scale, and once this is done, go to face mode with 3 and select the end of his basically stomach, and the upper one has to be at around his head. First we're gonna deal with these leg type of things here. So how we're gonna make 2 legs? We need to separate this. So Ctrl-R, and this makes a loop cut here. So when you click, it makes a loop cut. Select one face and press I, like inset, and some small number like 0.0, let's say 4. And the other one also. Grab these faces, move them down. And these are like too smooth actually from the tips, so you can add another loop cut here and also another one here. And this looks better right now, but the upper part is quite jagged or more like a cube, and the width is something we shouldn't speak of right now. So select these edges here and just press Ctrl X, which means dissolve, as you see here. So these are dissolved edges, they're gone. So let's move this one here up to around here. And now we have something that looks rather similar to what we wanna have, you know. So how to make this look better? First, of course, you see the legs have a larger distance between them. So you go here and select these faces here. Shift S, cursor to select it. It makes a midpoint here. And if you select the 3D cursor as the point of where we do things, the anchor point basically, scale it on Y. So something like that. And let's see if we match it with the reference. Does it look okay? With Alt-C, these are too wide. Let's grab these faces from the sides. Shift S, cursor to select it, and scale these until the feet are, reasonably placed. Let's move it on the Y. Looks rather okay. And we see that it's like too smooth. It looks like I don't know. I really don't know. So how do you do this? We can't add a loop cut here because this face here has 5 vertices, as you see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and loop cuts only are available on faces with 4 vertices. So we can use the knife tool. Vertex or face or edge mode doesn't really matter. You press K and press here. Then you press Z, which means cut through, as you see here, cut through on, and also C, so it snaps to some directions that are available here, depending on the viewport. And you click here and enter, and we've got a loop cut basically. Now after adding this loop cut, we have to scale this down, not to the cursor, but to the bounding box center. Let's move it also down a bit. Looks rather similar. Maybe the feet need to be a little more apart, and the scale also, we have to deal with that one first. So scale it on the x-axis. Does it look okay? The feet are too wide basically, so let's select the faces of the feet. Shift S, cursor to select it, because we need to scale to the midpoint of these faces and scale them on the x-axis. So this is how the feet should look like. Like circles, and body is way too thin. From the side view, let's scale it from the bounding box and on the x-axis, something like that. It looks okay, but it's still too thin, so just scale until it looks rather okay, and let's move it up a bit because it's a bit weird right now. So this is okay, this looks rather Among Us-y. So the next thing is the helmet, or as my brother said, it's the fat ass goggle or big ass goggle, something like that. So let's add a cube again. This should be rather okay, I think. Looks okay. Now let's add a subdivision surface modifier. Something like 2 repetitions is okay, or 2 levels. And let's have 2 loop cuts. You can scale them on the y-axis. If you want sharper edges, this looks okay, I think. Not from the top again, of course. Let's scale it on the y or x actually. Move it inside here. So let's make sure that the midpoint is just on the border of the starting point of this mesh. And shade smooth, and I'm gonna select these faces here. While the reference doesn't have this, I'm gonna move them down a bit. Makes it look like more cartoonish in a way. Also gonna scale it, make it a little bit bigger. This also is curved, so from the top we have these faces selected, and let's move them down on the x-axis. Now it's important that you have this point here so you can match this curvature, and it would be easier to do if you have flat shading, because now you see this line here when it matches the curvature of the body basically. Okay, now we have the character, and the next step is rigging. So how do we rig this? We add a bone like an armature, go to viewport display and check in front. So now whatever angle we look at this, it's in front. So this is gonna be the main bone. The bones are done in a way that when you extrude them, you gotta create another bone and it comes from the tip. So I'm gonna move it down and make it so that its endpoint is at around the main bone of the body, which will be such a bone. So this is the main bone, which is going to move all the body, and when you go to pose mode and you move this bone, it's going to be locked to the tip of the small primary bone, which is the starting point of all the bones we add in the future. So let's add the bones for the hips, and this is just extruding on the y-axis. And now let's select both of these and move or extrude them down on the z-axis. So now you've got the feet, you've got the hips, and of course the body. It doesn't have any hands, so you know, that's okay. And now how do we make the character move according to this or with the rig? So let's select the body and let's parent it to the rig. So it's gonna be like controlled by the rig. So we're gonna parent the character to the armature. Select in this order and Control P, armature deform, with automatic weights. So weights determine like which bone is gonna control which part of the body. So with automatic weights, and if we select this, body here and we rotate it, it works. But what you see here is that when you rotate this, you see some very, very sharp angles here. And to fix this, we need to remove the armature modifier from the body and apply the subdivision, because currently the geometry that the armature controls looks like this, and this isn't very detailed. So the bones can't bend the geometry smoothly enough, and this creates some, sharp edges. So apply the subdivision modifier and parent the character to the rig again with automatic weights. As you see, I guarantee you this looks a lot smoother, these hip parts here. So this is done, but how do we parent the goggle, or what's it called? I don't know, literally I don't know. Let's select the thing we want to parent and select the armature. Let's go to edit mode and make sure this is selected and press Ctrl P. Actually, let's go to pose mode, make sure this bone is selected and let's press Ctrl P. And not with automatic weights, because just could just be parented to the bone, because we don't want to deform this this glass part in any way, unlike the character. So press bone, and the same thing we have to do with the backpack. So select the backpack, the armature, go to pose mode, and Ctrl P, do bone. And now let's see if it does work with the character. As you see, everything is moving like it should, but we still need the materials. So let's go to shading. I'm gonna hide the overlays here, and actually I can remove this reference. It doesn't provide us with any useful thing about the materials. So let's turn off the overlays, and also I'm gonna make myself some more room here. Our character is gonna be in the space, so we should pick like an HDR that is something like space. So is this one okay? Maybe. I think this one's better. So this is like space, So first, when you add materials, you should add like the most important material first, because when you waste time on details, then afterwards you don't have like the result you want. You may have it, but I think it's safer to add the most important material first. So the body is the body, or actually the body. We need a definite article here. That's what I was taught in school. So this character will be placed on a blue background. I'm not going to use a blue material because the background is also blue. So this is like the main point, one of the main focal points of my scene. So I'm not going to use a blue material to just blend it in with the background. I want it to stand out. So among blue things, something of the opposite is going to stand out. So orange is going to stand out probably. Green is going to stand out, Purple is going to stand out a little less, but still it's going to stand out. So I'm going to select something like this. So that's okay, I think. And this is also the an important element of the scene, so it's gonna be saturated, you know. There is no need to select something like saturated just a little, because it's gonna be like so like bright right into your eyes. You have to focus on this character. So how we're gonna make this material more interesting? Let's add a wave texture. And let's make it look like, you know, this rubber material sometimes has like these bands, like this, but it also has seams. So how do we add seams? Let's press Ctrl T, and we got the mapping here, which tells us how is the texture going to be mapped on the surface of this character. So let's select, for example, normal coordinates, which is basically in what direction each face is looking at. It doesn't look very good, but if it choose UV coordinates, you know, we got seams here, right? So I'm gonna unwrap this object, basically tell Blender where the faces are. So U, unwrap, and actually I'm gonna do a smart UV project, so it looks more like it has been made of different pieces. So I'm gonna make the scale, of course, smaller, because there are suits that have some detail, you know. Let's add a bump node and connect the wave texture to the bump. Now if you preview this principled shader, by the way, you should have this node wrangler add-on for that. Here's node wrangler, enable it, it's gonna do good stuff. So it's too strong right now, so make the strength to 0, and it's starting to get too much here, so I'm gonna back off a little, and this should be the right amount. So what is the next thing? It's gonna add some roughness variation. So let's add a mask group texture, connect it to the height or the roughness, you know. It has some reflective spots and also some not very reflective spots. I'm gonna use the object coordinates for this one, because now it's gonna be distributed evenly on the object, you see. And also to make it look like it drips, you know, like some fluid, some dirty fluid has been spilled on the suit, I'm gonna scale it on the Z-axis by something like that. So, you know, now it looks like dripping. And of course, I'm gonna add some detail here like that and bring down the dimension. And we need to add a color ramp also. So what was our base roughness? It was like 0.5. Let's add something like 0.4 for the roughness, and for the maximum roughness, let's add let's say 8. So how does this look? This looks cool. I mean, this is okay. Actually, it's too shiny, I think. So let's add 0.55 as the main roughness. This looks better. The next thing is to actually add more bump, because I forgot. You know, this surface is looking very, very even right now. But let's suppose the character inside of this suit is like, you know, not so uniformal, has some fat from fast food and all that stuff. So let's fake the fat. Add another mask group texture. Connect the mask group texture to the height. You know, height to height, easy stuff. So how does it look? Looks like that. This is not what we want. So let's bring back the detail. And also let's connect the object coordinates. The window is so small here. So object coordinates to the vector here. Okay, how does this look? Evenly distributed cellulite and fat. So let's make this scale bigger, something like that. And now we have to connect this to the other bump. So normal to normal, height, height, normal, normal, easy. And let's preview this. Let's make it to 0 again, and let's start increasing until it's too much, and then let's back off. So I think it's too much, so let's back off, and it has some variation as you see here. And the last thing with the body material is gonna be, you know, color variation also, because it's dripping some dirt, so we should use a darker color in places where it drips. So we have the mask here, and we need a mix RGB. Make the first color the base color, and the second color also, and let's make the second color a bit darker, and maybe let's shift the hue a bit to the, you know, brownier side, because dirty stuff is brown. So let's connect the color to the base color, and how does it look? We have some dirt here, you know. I think that's too much, so let's add a math node and multiply this by some smaller value. We could use a color ramp, but you know, math is a smaller node, and we don't have much space here. So let's back it off around here. So this is a nice suit, I think. Has some dirt, has some uniform, not uniformal things, and yeah, this is finished. So something to this glass thing here, and as you guessed, shader is gonna be the glass shader. And let's add some imperfections. Now we have some, irregularities here, but we need a color ramp here. So color ramp, let's scale it to something like a dirt would look like, and it's gonna drip heavily. So shift this texture probably. Yeah, this looks okay, I think. So let's add some detail and bring down the dimension. The main roughness is gonna be 0 basically, but let's make it like 0.1, and the maximum roughness is gonna be, let's say, 0.5. How does the glass look? It has some irregularities. This is okay, I think. We could even actually add some bump, and let's use the same thing for the height. So, this is obviously too much. This looks kind of cool actually. But I'm gonna use a math node. I'm gonna use a multiply 0.1, and let's turn the strength down, something like that. Now the glass looks like it has been forged of something. Let it be like that. So the backpack, it's a metallic backpack, at least in my universe it is. So what kind of a color are we gonna use with this backpack? We could use black, I mean this works, but I'm gonna use something that's a little more like a bluish tint to it. Has a little bluish tint, so it creates like a contrast between the character and the backpack. So we need a Voronoi texture, and what are we gonna do is that we're gonna add a bump node, as we have done 3 times already, and connect the Voronoi to the height. Now it looks like this, not too impressive. So let's add the object coordinates again, because I'm a huge fan of object coordinates. Choose smooth F1, which is gonna make it look like this. So now I'm gonna increase the scale and increase it again, but I'm gonna invert the bump. So now you see we got something that looks like that. So this metal, right? That's the metal. And we could also add some color variation here, like same thing with mix RGB, and you can use any texture to drive this value. So this is okay, I think, for the backpack. And now let's move on to the hard surface model here. So to start with this hard surface model, we first need a reference, So I have a reference here. This one is from Gleb Alexandro. I found it from Google searching the hard surface. Having a reference is a good thing, because you don't have to copy it exactly, but you see like what other people do and where do they add details, where they don't add details and all that stuff. So first thing when you start modeling something complex is to start with the primitive shapes. So this is obviously cube, the basic shape here. I'm gonna make it smaller here, something like that, and select the edges here, and let's start carving out the basic shape. So I'm gonna do something like that. I'm gonna shade it smooth. Again, if you see like you have problems with shading, this is the answer. Check auto smooth here. Looks nice, right? Now, if you have basic shape, let's suppose this is your basic shape, and you want to add some more details, so get to the next step. This is where you're going to use booleans. So let's suppose I want to cut out the piece from here. You're just going to add a boolean modifier and select the object, which is the cutter. Now, if you make this the visibility, do bounce. And now you move this on the y-axis, you see it cuts into the mesh, as you see here. I make something like that. When I copy this in edit mode, I can basically use the same modifier for this stuff. So I'm gonna do something like that. Let's suppose this is our final shape here, okay? Let's suppose you wanna add pipes. Pipes are easy to make. You just use a curve, which is, depending on your preference, either Bezier or circle. Let's use a Bezier, and let's say I wanna add some pipes here. Select everything, and let's just give it a general shape, so something like that. We have something that looks like a pipe. Go to geometry, and under bevel you can choose round and make it look like a pipe. Now we want to add some more pipes, right? Again, non-destructive, add an array, and we want to select the right distance, and let's select a count of something like this. Okay, that looks nice, right? Okay, we have pipes, we have boolean, and let's suppose you want to add some, panel effects. You can do this by first going to edit mode, okay? There are a lot of ways to add panels actually, but I tend to use this one. So you add a loop cut where you want to have this panel. I'm gonna add another one. So you create a little rim. Is it the rim? I think so. And let's suppose you want to add one here as well. And now I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to select this one here is extrude. So I'm going to extrude along normals, which means like every face is going to be extruded by its direction, basically. This is how you add a panel. Looks like a panel. And if you want to add things more or see things more clearly, you can always turn on cavity and select screen or a world or both. I'm gonna use the world because sometimes when you use the screen, you might mistake these white lines for bevels. So I'm gonna use a world. And also cavity, you know, makes your model look better than it actually is. So it's better to make a model look better without cavity. So when you add cavity or in renders, it's gonna look even more amazing. So let's suppose you wanna have these areas here. For that, let's add a cylinder. Let's move it here. And so this is gonna be the cutter. And let's select the main object. Let's add another boolean with the fast algorithm and choose the cylinder. Now, of course, you need to change it to bounce. So, you know, you see what's happening. Change the shading to smooth, and this looks rather nice, I'd say. Okay, and now let's suppose you want to add, you know, a whole bunch of that. You can also mirror booleans for that. So you select mirror and the main object. You see, you got one here. You can select the axis, and with a very little time, we have made something that looks rather complex. So this is how you can mirror booleans and create some interesting shapes. So this is the shape you're happy with. What is the next thing? I think I'm gonna add some robotic hands here. So you can always model these yourself. These are not like very hard. Basically, you can use all these techniques I showed you here, but you can also get them from Gumroad. So in Gumroad, there's this artist called Adrian Rutkowski, and he does have free packs of kit bashing libraries, so really high quality, and they also are free, so you can get these. And in here you have all sorts of different, you know, joints and stuff you can use to create robotic stuff, and you can, you know, always name a fair price, like something like, let's say $10, and buy this. So this is where I got mine. So let's suppose you downloaded this, and if you want to add this, the way to go is to file, append, and also navigate to this area, you know, the folder where you got this. So I got Blender assets, and here I have this, and I want to add some hydraulics. So you're going to go to collection, and here we have all sorts of different hydraulic things. So I'm going to select this one here. Now when you append this one, it's going to look rather big. Scale it down, you know. So move it around here, add a mirror modifier, edit this object. I'm going to delete the bevel actually. Mirror it like that. Something like that. Be creative with the robotic hand, you know. I'm gonna add something for the hand to hold. Let's scale it on the x-axis, and this is a brilliant scene here. So how we're gonna rig this? First we need an armature like on the character, but it's different this time because we don't have any organic smooth movement. We have like hard strict angles and stuff like that. So let's move our cursor to this point here, and let's add an armature. So scale it down, and of course in front is the key when rigging something. So rotate it like that, and let's make it go to the middle here. So it's around there. I could snap this, but I'm too lazy for that. So one is here, and the another one is gonna come here, and I'm gonna move it right to the top here. Now we have an armature here. How are we gonna make this apply to this thing here? So first we need to make something that's called an IK rig. So add another armature, add this right to the top of this one here. So cursor to select it, and let's add an armature. I'm gonna delete it, and this is gonna be like the control bone, which is gonna control all the other armature points. See it in front. So now that the IK or the control bone is added, we go to object mode, we select both of these, go to pose mode, select the original and the bone here, or the control bone and the like slave bone or something like that, and press Shift I, add IK to active bone. And you see this yellow line appeared here, okay. Now when you go to object mode, or actually to pose mode, and select it, it's gonna do something like that, which is rather cool, you know. So now we only have to parent this robotic stuff to the armature. So parent this one to here, go to pose mode, select this, and press Ctrl P, do bone, and basically repeat it with other bones. It's just as simple. So, you know, select it, this bone, select this one, it's gonna be parented to the bone, and also select the last one, which is going to be parented to this bone here. So pose mode and Ctrl B to bone. So now when we move it, we should have something that looks like this, like a robotic arm, you know. Now the only thing left with this rig is to lock the axis of these bones, you know. So when we select the main bone here, we have to go to the pose mode and select, you know, this location area here and lock the X, because without locking it, it's gonna do something like that, but when we lock it, it's gonna act like we expect him to do. So now that you have done everything, I recommend you restarting actually, because when you do something for the first time, you make these little compromises somewhere, and you also make some mistakes, and when you're doing this, you develop the idea of how this should actually look. So when you restart, you have the whole freedom to do everything from the scratch, and you really get the result you want to have. So I recommend you restarting, and I promise you will get a lot cooler result when doing this. So let's, you know, suppose this is the 5th time we're doing this. This is looking so cool. We already are super proud of it. It's already uploaded to ArtStation. We just have to add some details here. So first, of course, we have to bevel everything. When I say everything, I mean like 99% of things have bevels in real life, except for one thing. I broke a wine glass, and the edge looked like really sharp, and I thought, how could I model this? Adding a bevel with broken glass is kind of like not very realistic. So this is the only case I know where you shouldn't use bevel. But here we have everything looking really ordinary, not broken, so we should add bevels. You could use a bevel modifier, but I think if you're happy with the shape, it's better to first apply all the modifiers. So from the top to bottom, because this could mess up something. So Command A, and Command A. And now let's start adding bevels. First, apply the scale, because bevels need the scale. And when you're adding bevels, think like, what is the real scale of this object? If we're adding too big of a bevels, this might look like it's very, very small of an object. So let's suppose we have everything selected here. And now let's add these bevels. So Ctrl B, and there's no need to add something like that. You don't need as much of segments here. So 3 is totally okay. And now that this is done, we have to add the materials. So let's add the main material. Hard surface is usually metallic. I'm gonna add this same, you know, metal stuff we added to the backpack. So let's add a bump node here. Bump goes to the normal, as always. And the distance goes to the height, as always. And now we have something like that, as always. And let's map this to the object, so everything is even. Let's make the scale bigger and also smooth F1. I'd say this looks kinda okay to me. I'm gonna select the color and make it something dark. And now we just have to add, again, some variation to the metal surface here, because it's like super smooth here. So let's add a Musgrave texture. Something like 0.2 could look okay, I think. Of course, we have to add some variation in roughness. This is like always the case. Let's say noise texture. I want to use this one for a while. So factor to the factor and object to vector. And the material is very, very finished. Now let's create the back wall, which means you add a plane right and scale it to match the camera view, and then you add some loop cuts. You know, you have this little square in the middle, and this is the area where the circle is gonna be. Go to preferences and enable the add-on called loop tools. Before using loop tools, select this face and subdivide it. Let's say 10, okay? And now select these edges here. You go to edit, loop tools, and select a circle. Now you see this doesn't look like a circle, it's an ellipse, right? So what's the problem? The problem is that we don't have the scale applied. So apply the scale, go back and circle, right? This looks like a circle. So, and when you're in the camera view, you see you can always scale this circle in the way you like, and this looks rather okay. And go to face mode, and with C you can remove all this nonsense inside of this circle. So this is removed, and the next thing we're gonna do is to add a glass viewing window or something like that. So let's add it's easy, let's add a UV sphere, scale this. And one thing to mention here is that you don't want to use like this part as the center of your window, because when you subdivide it, it's gonna do some weird things when it's glass. So instead of rotating it that way, let's stay in this rotation and let's delete most of the window. So for the material of this wall, I made something out of Voronoi and bricks. So now let's talk about composition a bit, right? So here we have our scene. Could be called like a really horrible composition so far. Some things are outside of the camera and some things are in total random places. So first thing when thinking about composition is like, what is your focal element? What are you gonna wanna show in your scene? The focal elements are the hard surface thing here and the character. So where are we gonna place them? It's a fun way to actually turn on this viewport display composition guides and just, experiment with this, like center. Okay, do I like center? I don't like really. So let's use like a ratio. Not a fan of that. Let's use a triangle and thirds, for example. You see, it created an interesting pattern. Maybe I want to use it. I do want to use it. So here we can see that an important point of the lines crossing is here and the other one is here. So what does it tell us? Maybe one, important element should be here and the other one should be here. So they're kind of opposing themselves. So I'm gonna select the character here and I'm gonna move it here, right? Position it right here. This is how it looks, right? And the next thing is, okay, we got one element. It doesn't actually have to be like precisely on this line, but it should be around here, So I'm gonna move it here, and the reason is that if it was like here, and as you know, we got this bright earth coming from here later on, we couldn't really differentiate between the character and the wall because it's just so dark here. But it's bright here, and our eyes really like contrast, so when I move it here, I should have like a really eye-catching thing going on here. The proof is here, your eyes are inclined towards this thing. So I'm gonna select the other thing here. This was supposed to be a computer actually. Something like that. Of course, contrast here. Here we don't have contrast, but we have a solution for that later on. Now let's pose the characters in a way that looks okay. I'm gonna go to local mode here, so I can, adjust the rotation according to the character. So go to pose mode and let's do something like that. Okay, this kind of looks nice, And maybe we wanna select this one here, go to pose mode and grab it and move that way, I think. This is the scene, basically. This is like the bare bones of the composition. Now, what is the next thing? Okay, I think we should use or add this lamp before we do anything else. So the lamp in this scene is going to be an image of an earth. Because I didn't model this myself, of course. File, import, and images as planes. You have to enable this add-on first. Downloads planet Earth. Let's change it to emit, and strength should be 1, and let's import images as planes. So when we're in the render mode now, you see the world should be set to 0, right? Now we have the Earth selected, and I'm gonna scale it up and move it so that it makes sense, Let's see how does it look, right? It does look okay. The Earth is there, but it's just so boring, right? What are we gonna do? We can use the line of the Earth as a guiding line between these characters. So this basically also accentuates this line in the middle. So we're gonna make the Earth look cool and also guide our eyes between these two main parts of the image. And I think actually like the window is too curved, so for my taste actually, so I'm gonna make something like that. Okay, looks better, definitely. And I think the Earth is in its place. It's guiding between the characters, but now you see everything is so dark, right? I'm gonna use the same picture here, duplicate it and move it here, behind the camera actually. And I'm also gonna make it bigger, open a new material window editor here for just a moment. And let's make a unique material. So click on this number 3 here, and now it's a unique material. This actually could be just emission. There is no need for transparency here. Now we can control this strength separately from the Earth down there. So as you see, it added something here.
which looks okay, but we first have to make sure that even before adding any supplementary light, that our exposure is correct. So go to exposure, the color management tab here. Let's check in the false color mode if anything is clipping, you know. Let's increase the exposure. Okay, white means clipping, so it's gonna clip now. And I'm gonna pull it back. Let's do something like that. I also want to preserve some details here. So see, I could actually crank this exposure quite up actually. I'm gonna do something like 0.5. Let's use 0.5. And now let's change it back to very low contrast. Okay. Yeah, we have this exposure set, and select something like 0.5. Okay. This is too much obviously. So let's use something like 0.2. Let's make 0.1 actually. Too much light here. So, okay, this is looking like we have like bare bones of lighting and composition here. We have a problem here, like you can see there's a thing here, but we don't actually see like what is the shape of this thing. How do we make this more apparent? Let's add the cursor here with shift right click, and let's add an empty. So the empty is like plain axis stuff, you know. And let's also add a light, which is gonna be a spotlight. I'm gonna move the spotlight here, and now I'm gonna add a constraint to the spotlight, which means it's gonna track to this empty here. And this means lighting becomes a lot easier, because here we're going to select the target as empty. And you know, wherever I move this light, it's always going to direct into this direction. So this makes lighting a lot easier. I'm going to select another 3D viewport here. And now let's go to the camera view and start experimenting with this light. Does this look nice? Yeah, I think so, but maybe we can do better. So move it around here. So I think this is a nice one here, but I'm also gonna make this lamp a bit bigger. So let's make like 1 meter of the radius, and let's make the cone a bit larger as well. So here's the thing, but I'm actually gonna move this one up. So we got some more accentuation on this side here. Okay, so we got the placement right, but we need to adjust the colors a bit. So we got blue here. What are we gonna use in the lamp? We could use blue, but this doesn't create any contrast. This creates some contrast in the sense of luminosity, but it doesn't add like a color harmony style of contrast. So I'm gonna use something like this color here. And also, because the middle part of the image is more important, I'm gonna make the saturation smaller, because right now this is so much more saturated than this earth here. Turn this down until I get something that kind of looks, you know, pink, but it doesn't catch your eyes too much. So now I'm gonna add another lamp, but I'm gonna make this an area lamp and also change the color to white just for a moment. Make another empty here and track this second lamp to the second empty. So this is an bigger lamp here, which is gonna accentuate the upper part of this hard surface model. Like that, this looks okay. So I'm gonna make it 1 watt and the color to something like slightly pink here. Moving on to the composition, the scene looks great, but we are missing secondary elements. We have the primary elements, but we don't have any secondary elements. So as you remember, I added a wrench, I added a coffee cup, but I'm not going to model these ones right now. So instead I'm going to add a cube, make it so that one secondary element is here, and the other one is here. Now I could place these like randomly. I think that you agree with me that this looks not pleasant if I'm gonna move this, secondary elements like this, because this is like blocking the way. So we could use them too as guiding lines. So we could do something like that or that. Let's say something like that. This one like creates more harmony and stuff. Now, what is the next thing? I recommend you take your render and you render it out, you make a test render and you invert it in Photoshop or GIMP, I don't know, Windows Movie Maker, doesn't matter. So just invert it and you'll see what is missing in the scene. When I was making the scene, I thought, okay, this one looks like this is okay. When I actually inverted it, I immediately saw that this is like so out of balance, because in here, we don't literally have anything. So what I did was add a curve, which is a Bezier curve. This is how I made this lamp there, you see. And also you need to, bevel this, just like you make some pipes. So this is how you bevel it, and let's add a material, which is gonna be emission, of course. And to create balance, what you're gonna do, you're gonna select the color you see here, copy the hex value and add it to here as well. Now it's more in balance, but as you see, the character is still like very dark, and we're more concentrated on these areas here instead of the character. So what are we gonna do? The character needs some kind of a light, or we have to light the borders a bit. I'm gonna add a spotlight. Let's put 1000 here so we see exactly where it's pointing. And I'm gonna view the character from here. So, does it look nice? It's too strong obviously, but we should somehow get a nice balance out of there. So now we got a reflection on this side here, and it's too strong. So let's use 100. This works well. And also let's create another lamp here and enhance the backpack here a bit. So I'm gonna create another lamp which is gonna be here. You know, the light is coming from the outside, so you can't put a lamp like here because it's gonna look like unnatural. Let's move the lamp here, pointing on this, you know, backpack here. And right now the character becomes a lot more pronounced than it was before. Now, of course, you need to add some more light because it's still like not too obvious that we need to concentrate on the character. Also, let's add the more of this indirect light here. So the strength should be, let's say, for about 0.25, and the contrast in the color management section helps us quite a bit. So now it's very low. If you add, let's say, medium low contrast, now it looks better, and it also doesn't have this like overcast or this light bleed here basically. So the scene is pretty much finished, but we still have something to do. So we could light this side of the object here, right? So I'm gonna duplicate, move it on Shift Z, remove the constraint because I don't need this constraint. And as you see, it made him look, or her, I don't know, a lot better. So let's add like 2 watts. So I think it's kind of finished here. You could also, you know, enhance the contrast of these sides here because it's on the dark part of this, you know, space basically. So you could add a lamp and increase the contrast of these robotic handles here, just as I did on the final image. And also, you know, you can basically just, you know, enhance the borders, create contrast, and I think you're gonna be like on a really good spot with composition. So this is how you make this kind of scene, but we also need to render this. So for the rendering, you go to the rendering tab, you know, if you have a GPU, then, you know, choose a GPU, and also denoising is recommended. You know, what else can we do? Basically simplify, makes things simpler and faster. So let's use like 2 AO bounces, which makes light after some bounces, a clay material or something like that. So it's gonna save on your computing power. This is my final render here, and you know, it's very different from the thumbnail, you know, because I added some color balance, I added some film grain, some sharpening, some glare, so basically like a ton of effects just by eye. If I like something, I kept it and moved on, added something else. If I didn't like it, you know, use something different, swapped out something. You know, that's basically the process I go through when post-processing something. So yeah, you might like be, maybe, like I know some people are disappointed when they don't get the exact result of a tutorial, but I think that like the skills and the mindset are more important. So basically I try to give you the way or the path you have to follow, or you can follow, to create a scene that looks like roughly like that. So it's more about how you can use these skills again to create something cool than you just know how to create this one specific thing. So I hope you learned something from here, and see you next time.